And now, without any further delay, let's go ahead and begin today's event, The Future of Omnichannel Payments. I'd like to introduce your first presenter for today's webcast, Holly Wurst, Director of Vertical Growth. Holly, you have the floor.
Hi, awesome. Thanks so much. So hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today, where we will discuss the omnichannel landscape and how you as a retailer or a retail partner can exceed customers' changing expectations by presenting to you some shopping trends that we think every retailer needs to know. So again, I'm your host, Holly Wurst, and I am graciously joined here today by Alan Holcroft, the Country Manager of Northern Europe for Seated Retail, a point-of-sale provider, as well as Kevin Ward, Director of UK Partnerships at Klarna, the fast-growing buy now, pay later provider. So today's presentation focuses around some research that WorldPay conducted with Euromonitor Consulting, where we interviewed over 1,200 consumers from the UK, Germany, France, and the US, and we captured some insights on what those types of consumers prefer when shopping in their omni-channel shopping journey. So let's kick off today by first all getting on the same page of what it means to offer an omni-channel customer experience. So yes, we all know that omni-channel means shopping on multiple channels. So from physical store to the online store, social media, and even nowadays voice commerce with your Alexa devices. But what omnichannel really means is being seamlessly connected. So customers should be able to easily pick up where they left off on one channel and continue that same experience on another. So I should get the same look and feel, the same payment methods, the same products to purchase, no matter where I'm shopping with a retailer. But not just that, a retailer should know who I am and all about me, no matter what channel I'm on. And that has been the hardest thing for retailers to capture in today's environment. And to add complexity to consumers shopping on multiple channels, you also have to add the complexity of the actual omni-channel journey. So a customer shopping journey has multiple touch points, from browsing to purchasing to delivery and returns to that customer care to lastly, and hopefully, leading some feedback. And at each of these touch points, your consumers may be using multiple channels. They could be using one channel, or they can completely skip a part of the actual journey. And it's not one way. Sometimes you're browsing for something, you're purchasing it, you're returning it, and then, oh no, you go back to browsing and returning it. So it is quite a complicated journey, and it's really important for retailers to understand this and make sure that every point of the journey is a seamless one. So where is omnichannel today, and where will it head in the future? It's very clear that COVID-19 has had a huge impact on payments and shopping habits as more people embraced online and mobile shopping. And what's great is our research found that more than half of these consumers say they'll maintain these habits in the future. But at the same time, we are seeing tons of new technology and new channels are emerging. Think of smart assistants, wearable technology, and even connected cars. You may soon be able to pay for your drive-through or your groceries by simply speaking to your vehicle or even your refrigerator. But brick and mortar stores are also changing. So post-pandemic, many businesses will be reconsidering the primary role of the physical store. It was already happening. You were seeing a lot of retailers talk about, oh, I want my in-store to be an experience, and I want to have a reason for my consumers to shop in and interact with my brand. And you will definitely see more of this into the future. So this brings us to jumping off to our panelists, and I have some questions for you guys today. But first, thank you so much for joining me. I wanted to start off actually, thank you. I wanted to start off first with Alan, actually. So as a point of sale provider, you must be at the forefront of the omni-channel experience. What trends are you seeing your customers ask for, especially when it comes to contactless shopping due to COVID?
Well, firstly, thank you for having me on today, Holly. Great to join you and Kevin. I think we've seen an awful lot of change in the last couple of years, and certainly accelerated in the last 12 months, right? It's been anything but boring. Sorry for the background of it there. It was going to happen, right?
Yeah.
In terms of trend, I would say probably there's an awful lot to talk about. But if we maybe look at it from a strategic point of view, what our customers are telling us is that it's got to be seamless, it's got to be international, and it's got to be secure. Right, so those are the kind of main core components of whatever strategy they happen to be looking at in the world of omnichannel. But if we break that down perhaps into some specifics, mainly we've seen a huge acceleration around the implementation of click and collect, and for obvious reasons, right? Retail's responding to the stores being forced, going into closure. And click and collect is a good way to kind of address that kind of shortfall that they're seeing. But actually, for me, the real argument for retailers really should be is that a click and collect shopper spends 14% more on average than a classic home delivery order. Okay, so there's a compelling financial case there. So that's been a real key trend that we've seen accelerating in the last couple of months. Also, we've seen a large uptake on the deployment of mobile point of sale, okay? And more importantly, within that mobile point of sale, the ability to handle the omni-channel workflows. So I'm talking click and reserve, I'm talking endless aisle, the store-to-web type workflows. So a huge type of demand from that. And I guess part of it is to maybe address some of the social distancing requirements that, compliancy that retailers are having to face in store. But actually, if we go back to your slide there, where the customers are expecting engaging and personalized experiences, mobility is a really key to do that. It's quite hard to do when you're stuck behind a cash desk, right? And you've got this tool this barrier between you and the customer. So huge looking at that part. And also in the whole mobile world, payments kind of really quite key in there as well. We all joke with our customers about, the high value shoppers is really happy to sit in your store for 45 minutes going through all your product and your own merchandise. But once they've made that decision, boy, they want to pay and they want to leave as soon as possible. So the payment element's key. So you can kind of keep that in the back of your mind, I would say. The other probably trend that we're seeing is, and it doesn't sound particularly innovative or exciting, but for me it's a real core fundamental. They are publishing their store inventory online or making it available to other channels. Okay, so it could be a marketplace, it could be their e-commerce site, it could be a wholesale partner. Something along those lines. But this is super key when your consumer or the customer is forcing you to kind of blur and blend those channels. Inventory is going to be a key differentiator going forward.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I've seen a lot of that. There's a lot of just transparency to the customer and making it very clear what's available, what's not, what payment methods, how quickly can you get out. So definitely trends we're seeing as well. The one thing, obviously, the last 12 months have kind of forced us into is, it's sure there's been a huge uptake with more people shopping online, but it's really, you still have to get that experience really spot on, right? In my own case, I had a recent example where try talking to a chatbot to ask why after 2 weeks of the funds being removed from your account, the order state is still showing the products in the warehouse. That's kind of quite challenging to deal with. So there's clearly an opportunity when we go back to that kind of topic of engaging and personalized experiences, regardless of which channel, you've got to get it right. Yeah, we'll dig into this in a little bit, but 100% agree. Awesome. Kevin, now to you. So Buy Now, Pay Later actually started off as an online-only payment method, but Klarna has begun to roll out an extensive in-store capability. Would you like to elaborate there on the capability and what moved Klarna to actually focus on this omni strategy as well?
Yeah, no, thanks, Holly, and likewise, like Alan said, really pleased to be here today. So thank you very much for having me. It's quite simple actually when it comes to Klarna and the way we move and flex. Really, it's down to consumer preference as the key playing point. If we look at our consumer preference, we have 90 million consumers worldwide. 28 million people have downloaded our app worldwide through 200,000 merchants in 19 different countries. So what we tend to do is really, really listen to our customers. And ultimately, our customers want to ensure that we have a ubiquity about our offering and our proposition. So that's probably like the key second point is that ubiquity around what we actually do and what's at the heart of Klarna. And what that means is that we're always on. We're available in every single channel, whether it be online, in store, through our app, on social channels that you can drive straight from. All of those things are really important to that end customer. And so the most important part of that ubiquity as well is there's no friction. So like you were saying at the start, Holly, whether it is in store or online or through our app, the customer expects a really, really clean journey, and they expect actually to have as few touch points as possible and hopefully to have one-click purchasing, which is something that we offer to returning customers. So we recognize that customer. Now, I think the third point, and which is really, really important as well, and we alluded to this through Alan's answer earlier, is that customer expectation. Customers now, are so hard to please. The expectations they've never been higher, and they will continue to grow. And what they see online now, more often than not, is a very strong proposition. And they expect when retail opens back up, which it will, there's lots of press that, is the high street over, is it going to struggle? No, of course not. We're human beings. We like to get out and about, it's really important. However, that experiential retail is going to be ever more important, and the opportunity to have true omni-channel propositions will be that customer expectation that we have to align to. And if they're not there, the customer, they just won't play, basically. If they have a world-class proposition online and it isn't replicated in store and it isn't aligned with experiential retail, then that's where the difficulties come in. But if we look at like our in-store journey at Klarna, we have 3 clear routes to market through in-store. So you can directly integrate into a merchant's POS system. So we have integrations through POS providers, or we can go directly into a bespoke POS system that the retailer has. So a good example of this would be Halfords. Halfords in the UK, we have about 600 stores that we transact in. And then the second way we do it is through our unique payment link. And so, this is a very light touch way to get started as a retailer, where you can just either send a link to the customer through your till system or an iPad, something like that, and go straight to the customer. And if it's a returning customer for Klarna, they can just, check straight out basically through one-click purchasing, which makes it really, really key and fast. And our biggest client on that one is probably Boots Opticians. And then finally, we can also drive our in-store adoption through a retailer's app. So H&M globally, we are part of H&M's app as a Klarna proposition. And why that's really important is actually you've got loyalty from the H&M side of things, but you've also got a huge amount of loyalty being driven through the Klarna side of things as well. So when those customers converge, the loyalty just grows and grows and grows, as does the repeat spend and average transaction value. So, we really feel like we are ahead of the curve as far as alternative payment methods are concerned in store, but we continue to listen and we continue to make sure that the customer's expectations are being met all the time. So social has been our new big channel for that ubiquity, and we will continue to grow that in this coming year.
Yeah, I love hearing you give examples of all of 3 of us are partners of retailers, but all 3 of us are having to also think of the omni-channel journey when most of us, started online or in store. We're also having to think about how do we grow with our retailers and change and adapt to all these new shopping and use cases that we're seeing. So it's pretty cool that we're all in this together. Yeah, awesome. So the 3 key themes that came out of this research after interviewing all of these consumers were that there were 3 things that consumers expect when having an omni-channel shopping journey. First is convenience. It's the number one factor. And to me, honestly, it was kind of a no-duh moment because we're all extremely time-strapped. We hate when there's any type of friction in the journey. We want to get in, we want to get out, and we want it to be easy. So convenience is definitely still key. Second was security. So 61% of consumers base their choice of payment on security. I also think this is a little bit, it depends a lot on the age of the consumer and the generation. So the older generation still a little bit scared about shopping online, and that's probably never going to go away. But the younger generation just expects security. So it's almost that basic right that you have to get right as a retailer. And as soon as you show one indication that your site isn't secure, boom, you've lost people. But then lastly, and something I think that is coming more to the forefront because of the change in how we're all moving to online shopping, is returns. So 37% of consumers will avoid your business if they face a returns problem. This is huge. It's almost 40% of your customers who won't return back to shop with you if they face a problem. And we all know that, people are returning objects all the time now. So it's really important to get this right. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into each one of these insights and then go back to the panelists and get their insights and what they're seeing from their point of view. So first off, we have convenience. So again, the primary driver of channel choice and an important factor in payment choice is convenience. And I think every single one of us, when we look deep down inside of how we like to shop, what payment method we want to choose, it all comes down as what is the easiest and what is the fastest. And the rise in digital and mobile wallets, I think, is what's showing that the most. Is like, it is so easy to have your card on your phone. Our phone is always on us. We never leave the house without it. But the amount of times I forget my wallet is insane. So it's amazing that, I have a payment method with me at all times. So I'd like to, jump back to our panelists and talk about convenience and really dive down a little bit deeper into it. So I want to open up this question to both of you, actually, is how do Klarna and CJID think about convenience when designing your products? I'll actually like to start with you first, Alan.
Yeah, thanks. This is an interesting discussion point, this one. I think firstly, as a software editor, it's probably important to know that CJID, we only work or focus on what we call the specialty retail sector, okay? And the common denominator of that particular sector is those retailers who are very focused on their end consumer, understanding their customer, they understand the importance of engaging them across multiple channels, et cetera, right? So, but by nature, this is kind of already in our DNA. But really, when it comes to start designing a software product, that kind of really starts with the understanding of what the end consumer needs. So our customer's customer, all right. And then really, when you only really understand that, can you then start the whole kind of element of design and software or coding, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. And of course, at CJID, from our perspective, we've got two things to deal with, because we've got the whole, what we call the UI and the UX, the user interface and user experience, and that's really aimed at the user of our products. Okay, so the member of staff in the store, for example. But then, of course, we also have to satisfy their customer. So for us, it's really interesting point. And I think things have really, what's really amazing is this whole digital transformation has really reshaped companies, how the way they approach software development. If we just look at a classic point of sale transaction, in a very short period of time, we've got to do a lot of things. We've got to handle the CRM element. We have to capture the customer. We have to know all the information. We have to decide whether they want to email a receipt, for example. There's elements of inventory management built in there as well, because we have to kind of manage all the stock elements. We might have to do the promotion management. Do they get a special price? Maybe this goes back to that little topic where and early on, one of the themes was the customers expecting a personalized experience, and maybe more on that later. But and then, of course, then there's the payment part, and the payment part is super key for us, because this is the one step in our software where suddenly we have to work alongside another software application, so someone like Klarna, for example. So we have to work together to make sure that whole flow is nice and seamless. And then once you've got that bit done, then you can start driving in those other factors. And it might be a choice of payment methods. It might be different ways of fulfilling or delivering that particular order for that particular customer. So for me, it's really interesting to see how we've evolved over, the retail market has evolved over time, and it feels like only maybe just 10 years ago, payment was never really seen as an opportunity to provide a better level of service to the customer. In fact, really, 10 years ago, maybe the most innovative thing was the fact that whether the retailer offered to accepted your Amex card or not, that was the big thing. So, but when I look at these little stats over here, I think the one thing that I find really interesting is that whatever the whole convenience thing has to cover all the different trends. We see different behavior based on which generation, and of course that varies by country as well. So it's absolutely key and really should be at the heart of whatever decision a retailer takes. We have to understand how this is going to impact the customer better.
Yeah, I came from the product side. So I worked for a brand where we made footwear. And I always go back, we used to think product is king. So if you get the product right, everything else will fall into place. Your brand will be fine. You'll win. But when you actually look at the purchasing funnel, payments is at the very end. So you've gotten the customer all the way down to let's just click the button. And if it goes all wrong there, you've lost them for good. So I love it, I guess, that I'm starting to see retailers really think about the payment key and making sure they're getting it right, because it is the end and you've got the customer, and it's so easy to get it wrong by not offering Amex or not offering Klarna if that's what customers want. So it is kind of interesting. I love it. Awesome. So yeah, Kevin, going back to you, Klarna, how are they thinking about convenience when designing their products?
Yeah, so much like Alan, I think the key thing is it's customer first. That's how you have to start all of your approach. What's interesting about Klarna though is that we have two customers. So we have our merchant, who is our customer, and then our end consumer, basically. So we have to really think about both sides of the story. And so we have to drive convenience for the end customer. That's essential, because if we don't drive convenience for that customer, then it affects the loyalty of that customer into the merchant. So it's a really, really difficult game to play. And we feel like we're doing a good job. And the reason why we feel like we're doing a good job with it is because of a few key reasons, really. So I mentioned ubiquity already. I might mention it a couple of times more, and I don't mind that I'm going to do that, because it's really, really important that the customer can start and end their journey across multiple devices, multiple channels. That's really important. So that ultimately drives that immediate convenience. Whether they're sat on their sofa, in their office, on the bus, on a train, it shouldn't matter. Klarna is available for that customer there and then, and they can click and check out very quickly. So that's vitally important, is that ubiquity side of things. The second point is it must be friction-free. So, we offer one-click purchasing to return customers. So essentially, we recognize that customer through the cookie network. So it's a convenient play because that customer can then go through the journey seamlessly without friction. It's a simplistic repeat spend option through Klarna, which I think, again, if you're a regular user for that merchant, for that retailer, then you want to be able to just drive through that process as quickly as possible. And then also, one thing I really like is that you can save your payment details within the Klarna app and within your profile. So if you're like me and you've purchased stuff on the sofa before and your wallet's upstairs or your purse is upstairs, with Klarna, you don't have to leave that. You can go through that process, because of that personalization. And that third point is personalization. It's really, really important that a customer feels relevant to the merchant and the provider, that, you know, ultimately they're a Klarna customer, they're the customer of the merchant as well. And they want to make sure that, you know, it's a seamless journey, but also one that they feel like they're bought into. So when a repeat customer comes into a Klarna merchant, you know, we'll say, "Hi, Holly, thanks for coming back," or, you know, we'll also present your most used payment method through Klarna as the first payment method, which is important because that drives that convenience for you as well. But also, most importantly, is through our app. So within our app, you can have a wish list now. So you can essentially say, right, these are the 10 items that I really want to, you know, purchase at some point down the channel. And also you can apply for price drops as well around that. So you can have a look at when it's convenient for you and also when it's most cost effective, which I think is really important. And then the penultimate one is communication. So when we talk about communication, it's vital that the customer feels bought into that buying process. And that's at purchase, but most importantly, it's post-purchase. So we actually integrate with all the ERP systems and delivery systems. So through your Klarna app, you will get that push-com notification of when your item has been shipped, where it is in the journey, when it's going to be delivered. And if you do want to return it, which we'll come on to in a bit, then actually you can do that through the Klarna app. So you can give the merchant an early warning system into this item's coming back. And then the customer can actually pause their Klarna payment as well within that. So it's all driving that convenience. And why are all those things really, really important? Because they drive loyalty. You know, that's the key thing about convenience. If you are easy to deal with as a merchant and you have world-class products, which is what we're all striving for, then if we help drive that convenience through Klarna, that customer is going to come back, repeat spend, and spend more. And so that's why all of those points are really, really important.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the key theme at the end of all of this, of why you offer the convenience, the security, and the returns is 100% to build customer loyalty, because there's so many options nowadays, especially as we move online. So how do you get that person coming back for repeat purchases? So that's very important. Awesome. The next insight that we saw was security. So again, security is a must-have for any consumer, and sometimes it even overrides convenience. But again, I think it has a lot to do with that age range of people. So we saw that Gen Z actually had the lowest security concerns, but it's because they grew up with a computer. They've lived their whole life with a computer, so they just expect it. And so as a retailer, it's important that you get your website right, you get your checkout process right, because as soon as there's an indication that this site isn't secure and a customer feels a little bit wary, or they read reviews and there's one bad review on there about security, they'll immediately go somewhere else. So it is definitely important, and you need to make sure as a retailer you're putting all the signals there of security signage, HTTPS secure websites, everything that you can do to make it that secure shopping journey. So coming back to the questions of, you know, what you guys are saying, I guess, Kevin, going to you, what is Klarna doing to ensure secure payments for both merchants and consumers?
Yep, no problem. So security is an interesting one. It is so important to customers that they feel secure in the shopping journey, but they don't want to see any of it.
Yeah.
In the UX, they just want it to happen in the background, which, you know, I feel exactly the same. You just want to know that it's taken care of, you know. So I think the key thing from a Klarna perspective is that, you know, we take the fraud and credit risk for the retailer. So we have to be uber confident we are underwriting that customer correctly, and we're finding them, and that they are a customer that's known to either the bureau or Klarna, so that we can drive that confidence. So I think that's really important, because the merchant wants peace of mind from their partner as well, that you have got security at heart, you know, and that they don't have to have any difficult conversations or end up with anything negative coming out of the back of any security issues. So I think that's really important. I think also product plays a big part in security. So, you know, at Klarna, we have 0% products and no fees as well. So again, that tends to attract the right customer into the funnel in the first place, which I think is vitally important. But then all the stuff that I was talking about that the customer doesn't see that protects them and safeguards them are really important next steps. So for instance, we do a soft search on the customer to make sure that we find the customer, that they're at the address that they've applied to, and we're aligning all of those sort of data points with the credit reference agency, which is really important. Now, because it's a soft search, it doesn't hit their credit file. So, ultimately, it isn't impacting the customer's credit file, but it's giving us and the merchant a really good understanding of who that customer is. So that's sort of point number one. The second point is that we have a huge cookie network data set, okay? And within that, we actually have device recognition. So ultimately, if we see a customer that we're used to on a random device, etc., then we may put another step in the process, but more often than not, that doesn't occur. So that's really important that we do that. Within the background as well, there's the affordability check. So we're seeing if the customer is good for that purchase, because we don't want to get the customer into any indebtedness that they can't afford. So, that's, again, a massive one as well. And then finally, we have what's called our one-time password, or OTP, where essentially we're putting over that layer right at the end, where we're saying to the customer, great, you've gone through the process, and we're just going to send you a 6-digit code to your mobile, which you can put in. Now, the most important part about all of those points that I've just raised is they happen in real time. So all of those points happen as quickly as a website page will turn over. And this is what I mean about the customer not being impacted from a UX position. They expect all these things to happen, but they still want that convenience and that world-class journey off the back of it. So it's something we work really, really hard on. And one of the key things we do, all of our sort of UX is driven inline as well. So again, that's something that always worries the customer when they're taken away from your website to go and do security checks. Immediately there's a flag. There's a huge drop off there, what we find. So we try and drive all of our merchants down our inline integration to make sure the customer is experiencing that world-class sort of payment option and customer experience, while making sure we're taking care of all of those potential fraud and credit risk problems at the back end. So for me, it's making sure you're being responsible as a lender, but making sure the customer doesn't feel that any of that is going on in the background.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the OTP and device recognition and things like that. Like with PSD2 coming out and stuff, that's something WorldPay saw as well, as many retailers were scared that adding additional security checks was going to create that friction and destroy the convenience of shopping online or shopping with certain devices for consumers. But what we're seeing and what we saw in the research is that consumers are actually happy to add an extra step if it means the process is extra safe and secure. And luckily, we all have our phones now that work off of biometrics, and it's making the process that much easier. And so I think in the future, it's just going to be super seamless as people expect to click something on their phone, use their eyeballs or facial recognition to secure a payment. So it'll be good going forward. Awesome. And then the last big insight that we saw from our research, and probably the one I like talking about the most, because I think it's coming into the forefront and maybe retailers still haven't nailed returns as much, but it's basically you need to get returns right because it is growing. So especially with some fast fashion brands, you can see some returns as high as 60%. So it can be really intense and it's really expensive for retailers. So how do you get this process right so that you're catering to your consumers, but also you're not completely destroying the value of your brand or products? And again, to highlight that, we found that 37% of consumers will not shop with the retailer again if they encounter a problem getting a refund. And this jumps up to 50% for Gen X. So the younger generation is much more picky when it comes to getting the returns process right. And then 54% of consumers said that brands should prioritize a faster refund and returns process if they want to inspire customer loyalty. So not only do they want to make sure there's no friction, they want it quick and they want it right. So extremely picky. So jumping over to you all, I'd love to understand here how returns and what you're seeing in your business. So Alan, with returns being facilitated now via post or store drop-off, how can retailers ensure that they get a centralized view and a streamlined process?
Yeah, so the whole returns topic, really everyone's bugbear, and probably very, very topical right now as well, for the UK retailers who have the additional challenge of Brexit and Brexit logistics thrown in there. But let's not go down that route today. So I think taking the payment side out of it, but the first thing that a retailer needs to do and to manage properly from a returns perspective is control and visibility, right? It's as Kevin said earlier, having that real-time insight is fundamental. It's not even key. It's actually it's a basic. It should just be there in your business. The whole fundamental the fundamental building blocks of an omni-channel strategy really rely on that real-time data. In particular, a single view of customer and a single view of inventory. Okay, and returns form part of that key process around that inventory management. But really, you need technology to help you do this, regardless of what you do. There's no doubt about it if you want to kind of manage this at scale. And the other thing that we see there, and I think a lot of retailers will agree and say that part of the challenges that they have around this particular area is the topic of legacy systems. Okay. So the pace of change between implementing or replacing your legacy system versus the pace of change in the market, there's a big disparity between those two verticals, and it's closing that gap is kind of key. And one of the things that we are seeing our customers deal to address this was either they're turning to order management solutions or even distributed order management solutions to help them kind of plug that gap. And that's one of the, I'm going to do a shameless self-plug here, but that's one of the great things that we do over and above our view as a classic point of sale provider. In fact, we don't really talk about, and in the past when I first started in this business, we used to talk about sales receipts. That was the big metric. But actually we've moved away from that. We now talk about orders, all right? And there's a big difference between those two words. Anyway, I think in a nutshell, what I'm essentially trying to say is that returns is an opportunity, but in order to capitalize on that opportunity, you need to have the right systems and the right technology in place to help you manage it. Otherwise, it's going to become a blocker for you. And then we've probably all experienced, right? We've all probably had a negative returns experience at some stage, and I would suggest that percentage of 37% is going to kind of increase as time goes on. So there's likewise there's an opportunity to prevent the problem, but there's also really that opportunity to turn it into a gain, right? To really take benefit from it.
Yeah, I like how you mentioned the legacy systems, because I think that's something that a lot of retailers are experiencing. And it's a lot of discussions that we have with retailers as well, is like, I have these legacy systems. They're not doing what I need them to do. They're not speaking to each other. And so it's great to work with companies like yours or with ours, and that help kind of bridge them together and speak to each other. But also sometimes, retailers need to take a step back and even upgrade their systems, because it's going to be worth it to set that foundation for the future, which is good.
Yeah, absolutely. And just on that point, one of the, slightly off topic, but one of the really interesting trends that we've seen is how quickly our customers are taking on board our cloud platform solutions, right? And one of the big things there that they're starting to see the benefit is those cloud platforms get upgraded for them. They can't lag behind with their upgrade strategy, and that's a huge benefit when we see the fast-moving pace of change driven by the customer. So you have to be able to adapt to that rapidly. So absolutely, key point.
Yeah, amazing. So Kevin, on to you. Klarna actually encourages more returns. You guys help start the try before you buy trend. So what types of problems does try before you buy actually help reduce in the returns process?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one for us because it is actually a bit of an urban myth around Klarna driving up returns. So yeah, in some merchants, I'm sure that there'll be a couple of merchants out there where we do drive returns up, but in the main, we're actually net versus card in a huge proportion of our retailers, and actually quite a few of our retailers who are loyal to us and are really tapping into our loyal ecosystem are now starting to see some really, really positive benefits in Klarna actually driving down the returns process. So, for instance, River Island reported in their last QBR, we were actually 4% less as far as returns were concerned versus card, which for them, a business of their size, you can imagine, is absolutely phenomenal stats, you know? So what we actually try to do is work really closely with our retailers with that real-time sort of information on how we can work together to drive down returns. So yeah, it's an interesting one, but it's a bit of an urban myth that we're trying to dispel. So thank you for bringing it up. But I think secondly, to sort of decouple it, I think something that Alan said is what I've got written down here as my absolute key point. I honestly believe that returns are the biggest opportunity in retail right now. I genuinely do. And it is now time for retailers and merchants to embrace the returns process, because the companies out there, like your Gymsharks of this world who deal with us, who are nailing it, on the returns process, are exponentially growing far faster than a lot of companies out there. They have a seamless returns process. It has to be seen as part of the proposition. It must be easy. It must be fast. It must be free as well. That's really important. We're seeing a lot of retailers still charging for their returns process. Customers have got the opportunity to shop in millions of different storefronts. They're going to pick the ones that have the best processes pre, during, and post-purchase, So I think that's really important. Ultimately getting returns right really, really drives that loyalty, as you put on here, Holly. And I think one of the key things as well is with our products, we're paying the merchants at shipment, up front, in full, And so if the customer, doesn't really want the purchase in the long run, the customer isn't being financially, inhibited at all, and the merchant is actually getting what they want out of it through the sale. And so if they then couple that by having a world-class returns policy, not only are they getting the sale, but they're making it easy for the customer to transact with them at the back end. And that in itself drives loyalty. So whenever I talk to any retailer in my role, big, small, or in random verticals, my feedback is always the same on returns. It's let's get hold of this and make sure that we're absolutely owning the narrative.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think it's also important for retailers to understand, like, even during the returns of how a customer returns the product, is I live right by my post office and the line is literally like 30 minutes long to mail something. But then you can offer the click and collect like inside a convenience store, which I'm in and out in 2 seconds. I can print my label. I don't own a printer anymore. And it's even thinking of that that last mile and that end part that is so important as part of the journey, and making sure you're partnering up with the right logistics partners out there to get it right. But very, very cool. I agree with you. I think returns is definitely a huge opportunity going forward. Okay, amazing. So to kind of end out the research, we did conduct this research by the US, France, Spain, and Germany. So I just wanted to highlight a few of the nuances that came out with each of these different countries. So it's important to have a broad omnichannel strategy, but here at WorldPay, and I'm sure at Cegid and Klarna, we actually find some consumer differences when you go into market. So we actually encourage you to localize when you get into these markets to make sure that you're offering the most convenient, the most secure, and the best returns process for your consumer, no matter where they are and which industry. So I just wanted to highlight a few of the differences that we saw in our research with some of the big countries that we looked at. So when it came to preferred channel for purchasing, the US and Spain, the ` channel was online, but when the France and Germany, it was actually in store. So definitely kind of interesting that some countries still haven't adopted the full online shopping environment. When it came to the preferred payment method of purchasing something in store, for the US and France, it was card. Spain was 50-50, equal between card and cash. And Germany was actually their preferred payment method in store was cash. And that's something we've seen time in of all the research that WorldPay does is cash is king in Germany. But it will be very interesting that, COVID pushed digital payments into the forefront. So how long will that stay king? But important to know that in Germany, you still need a till and a cash register, and it's still very important. The most important factor related to choice of payment method. So in France, Spain, and Germany, it was security. So make sure you show those signs that the payment method is secure. But in the US, it was actually price. And thinking as an American myself, I think back to growing up, and there's a few things where we love cards everywhere, but sometimes retailers or certain applications will charge a convenience fee of if you use your card. So Venmo is a good example. And so that will immediately create a new habit for us where we will link up our bank account just so we don't have to pay that 3% surcharge. The percentage of consumers who use one-click checkout. So France actually has the lowest amount of consumers using one-click checkout with only 41%, when the US had the most at 53%. So how does that play into a retailer strategy? And then lastly, the frequency of use of click and collect. So France and Germany had the largest percentage of consumers who had never used click and collect at 39%. And then the US had the most frequent use of click and collect. So 38% of consumers use it all the time or most of the time. So again, how as a retailer do you take some of that knowledge and incorporate it into your shopping experience? So I'd actually like to bring it back to you, Kevin and Alan, and see, do you guys also see differences in consumer or merchant behavior in these markets or other markets? And are there any standouts of different type of behaviors that you see? Alan, I'll start with you first.
Yeah, so I find this really interesting, and this whole kind of international piece really sits quite well with us. At CGID, we have customers in 75 countries, so we get to experience working with a lot of different retailers with very wide store estates and geographical spread. I guess the first thing that kind of struck me about this was actually the frequency of click and collect. I think there's one positive thing to look at there. They're all in the 30%, right? So that is something to take some encouraging note. Even interesting. I never would have thought France would be that low actually in the uptake of click and collect. When we analyze so we have internally we have a big data initiative where we are able to analyze all key performance indicators from all of our cloud customers, so we can analyze all this data. Actually, the uptake in omni-channel has been quite dramatic, especially in the last 12 months. So I think those people lagging behind, France and Germany, we will see a change. I think it's right in terms, broadly speaking, around the omni-channel part. The UK seems to me to be ahead of some of our European counterparts, maybe with the exception of one or two of the Nordic countries, perhaps. They seem to have more of a kind of an open mindset. The thing that I did laugh about there was cash in Germany. That's based on my own experience and my travels around Germany, that's definitely been the case, and I would expect that to change pretty rapidly. It'd be interesting to hear Kevin's thoughts on these ones.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, it's like from a Klarna position, it's more about product. So what we're very proud of in our 19 markets is that we have the right product for the right market for the consumers to use with convenience and loyalty. So if we look at Germany, for instance, I mean, there is a shout now that if you're not with Klarna in Germany, are you actually in Germany properly as a retailer? Because 40% of all online transactions in Germany are going through Klarna systems now. So it gets to the point where, where you think, well, actually, I'm doing myself a bit of a disservice as a retailer by actually not igniting Klarna in that channel. So although, what we're predominantly online in Germany, of course, we've got our in-store proposition, but that has come after our online domination, if you like. So that's growing exponentially. So in Germany, that's sort of the key, is that we have the right product, which is pay by invoice, which is what a lot of the German, people want to see, which is fantastic. And then if you look at like the US, for instance, because of the payment cycle in the US, our product is pay in 4, where you basically have 4 lots of fortnightly payments coming out. So, if we're looking at affordability and making sure that we're driving the right metrics in the consumer, then, being in line with their actual payment cycle is really, really important. And that's why that product was designed in that way. And then if you look at in the UK, we have pay in 3. So, you pay 33% today if you buy something, and then it will go into March and then into April for the next 2 payments. So in the UK, we're seeing 3 different pay cycles. So it allows us to spread that purchase across 3 different paydays, where some of our competitors in the UK are trying to do that over 4 weeks and 6 weeks, which is too short, really, because it's not giving the customer that flexibility. So what we see from a Klarna perspective is driven through our own product, and it's key to us that the product must fit the market. And much like we discussed at the start, Holly, around customer first, when we think about the market, we think about the customer first in line with the market and what the market expectations are. So that's really important to us. So and much like the stats on slides, we're seeing lots of similar uptake in the Klarna network as well.
Yeah, I love that. We see that as well too, as it would be so easy for retailers to take the same product or the same process and implement it across the globe. And the 3 of us here in our organizations, we try to, educate the customer about the differences that we see of all the data that we're collecting, and try to show that there are nuances and possibly even different products that you need, depending if you're US or the UK. So very cool. So lastly, just to kind of sum up everything that we learned today is, we're all here to really look at this research and, the data that we see in our own day-to-day jobs, is that your customers are creating new habits, and we're here to help you embrace all those new channels that you're starting to see within your retail journey. And through offering this omni-channel journey, you're able to achieve a single view of your shopper. You're able to personalize the experience, understand them, and get to really crux of what's making them shop in certain channels or along a certain aspect of the journey. We're able to help you achieve a single view of your inventory. So much what Alan was talking about, that endless aisle experience is so important. And then lastly, we're here to help you achieve that single view of your payment. So whether you're online or in store, just like what Klarna is doing, is you're able to offer the same type of payment method that your customer loves, and that it's convenient and secure no matter where they are shopping with you. So I'd love to open it up for questions. If everybody could please ask your questions in the chat box. We have a little bit of time that we can throw out some questions to the panelists. We have one question at the moment that actually is directed at Alan. So the pandemic has actually forced retailers to rethink the role of the store, and another form of offering convenience, going back to our first insight, was that click and collect and curbside pickup are new ways of offering that convenient shopping experience. So how are you seeing your retailers respond to these new use cases and shopping journeys?
So I think the first thing that probably strikes me there is I've been really amazed at the amount of creativity I've seen out there, for a starting point. Yes, click and collect has gone through the roof, and the variations of that. And when I say variations, I speak from a technical perspective. Curbside pickup, for example, that's just one of the kind of derivatives of that. But we've also seen some other really interesting things. So, for example, we work with a luxury brand based here in the UK, and they do this very clever thing where their customers can order or reserve a range of products facilitated and curated by the staff in the store. Those goods are then chauffeured to the customer's house, and the customer can then try them on in the privacy of their own home, and so on and so forth. And then they return the products that they're not going to purchase, right? And so that's amazing. That's just such a clever way. Here they're dealing with the impact of store closures. Here they're leveraging their store inventory, and here they're providing a really high level of service. And payments are a really key part of that, right? Because that also, once again, has to be that seamless, really slick part. So the pay by link type trend that we're seeing is really interesting from that perspective. I was on a webinar recently where another of my customers was telling me that in some occasions for their high net worth customers, they are chauffeuring them in from the home counties to come and visit the store in London because the consumer has concerns about traveling in a safe manner and so on. So that's just really mind-blowingly good, but it's really hard to do at scale, right? And for different, obviously, retail verticals. I think in summary, for me, we've all been banging on it, but for ages. But omni-channel will become more and more important of a priority. We are going to see things like stores with smaller assortments, perhaps combined with experiential kind of retail, where we're going to see endless aisle kind of capability come more to the fore. Acceleration on the personalized element, an area that I'm really frustrated with. And I think generally retailers could be doing better. It's not particularly hard to do, just start with a very clear and simple strategy, get your toe in that water. And I think we're also going to see kind of an acceleration of maybe ship from store scenarios. If the lockdown and disruption to physical retail has shown anything, that logistic challenges are going to shine a light on the importance of having accurate inventory. And I think we will probably see less stores perhaps on our streets, but stores of maybe a higher quality, perhaps in terms of being fitted out and the experience and the staff training and stuff, all that goes kind of along with that. So that's my view.
Yeah, no, awesome. Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of retailers as well talk about virtual reality and augmented reality as payment methods and experiences. So it will be interesting going forward what we kind of see change in the use cases of shopping. Yep. So I know we're running out of time, so sorry, we'll answer the questions through email. We can get back to everyone afterwards. But thank you all, everyone, for joining. I love leaving these webinars with just kind of a round robin question. And that question today is, what is your number one piece of advice for retailers thinking of an omni-channel approach? So we'll leave it off with that. And Kevin, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so quick and easy, I think that you should partner with a provider who can do the heavy lifting for you. And it is also really, really important that that partner is very well recognized in the marketplace and has a huge ecosystem that you as a merchant can tap into. So essentially you are driving down your customer acquisition costs while also being able to provide a world-class proposition for, omni-channel retailing.
Amazing. Alan?
Yeah, it was interesting, Kevin. You actually took some of the words right out of my mouth there. I banged on a drum about the importance of changing and transforming your business with systems and so on and so forth. But for me, the important part is know your customer, understand your customer, and work with the right partner. Find the right partner to work with to go on this journey of change with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for joining us today. And thank you everyone on the call who's listening. I hope you all have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, Holly.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.